Hi there, this is a quick refresher on what a steel paragraph is. You'll be using these all the way through your English studies in order to build your paragraphs into essays for analysing texts. So what is a steel paragraph? You start off with a statement. This is your topic sentence. It answers the questions and introduces the ideas which the paragraph will be about. There are no techniques in the statement, and it can be more than one sentence long. You might like to start it with a strong statement, say about survival. Survival is something that all humans will have to face. That will be your first sentence. And then the second sentence of your statement would be, this means that. And that's where you unpack your statement. You unpack the meaning of it. Your second part of your steel paragraph is your technique. Okay, this is, you identify a technique that you'll discuss, like say a metaphor or some figurative language or whatever it is, okay? You might like to provide your example first, so you can swap the technique and the example. It doesn't have to be rock solid in order, but it must appear in the paragraph, the technique and the example. So the example is just a quote from the poem, which is an example of the technique. So your quote has to have the technique that you've identified in it, obviously. Do not actually use the word technique in your steel paragraphs. Metaphor, talking about a metaphor is enough. Don't waste words by actually saying the technique of a metaphor. Now, the explanation part of your paragraph is the longest. It's the elaboration. It's also called the elaboration. Most of your paragraph should be taken up with this green part. It's where you do your analysis and you show us your thinking. So it's the most important part of your paragraph. Your linking sentence is demonstrating to your reader what they have learnt from your paragraph about, for example, survival. So it's repeating the same ideas that you've got in your statement, but just in different words. So a nice analogy to look at is the hamburger analogy. So you've got these hamburgers here. So you've got your statement and your link, and they're the buns, they hold it all together. Your technique and your example are the salad, that's the healthy bits, you need those, but the elaboration is the meat in your hamburger. It's not a hamburger really unless it has the meat, or if you're a vegetarian, a nice portobello mushroom. So at this stage, when you're just practicing steels, you're just doing the single technique, but very quickly you'll upsize to or supersize to the statile, which is the two techniques, the two examples, the two elaborations, and still just the one statement and link. But really in the senior school and upper junior school, you should be doing 3 techniques per steel paragraph. Now each essay that you write is going to have at least 3 steel paragraphs plus an introduction and a conclusion. So let's have a look at an example. Here's a steel paragraph. Let's have a look here. Here we go. So there's a poem, The Loner, that you might have read before, read in Year 7. Okay, and this is your question. What ideas about school playgrounds has Julie Hodder explored in her poem, The Loner, and how has she used poetic devices to explore them? So your statement here is very clearly, you're answering the question. Hodder explores the idea of exclusion in her moving poem, The Loner, which is set in a school playground. Exclusion is a common problem in schools and many children suffer. Hodder is able to convey empathy for one such child. Okay, so this is your red section, your statement. Now, you use here's your support for your statement. You're trying to show in this paragraph that the poem is about exclusion, and one of the techniques she uses to convey this exclusion is powerful tactile imagery. The frustration and boredom of not being invited to be part of a social group is expressed in the line, he smacks his hands against the wall. So this is your pink bit. This is your example. He smacks his hands against the wall. So this is meaning to show us that he's excluded. He's got nothing else to do except smack his hand against the wall while everyone else is playing. Now your elaboration, you unpack, you link your example, and you explain, you analyze how this little statement here, this little quote, which includes this technique, expresses this idea of exclusion. So this is the most important bit of your paragraph. Violence and exclusion and isolation is what the loner, the student, experiences and observes in the playground. It is not a welcoming place for him, and the tactile imagery of the hand, which should be a hand extended in friendship in a nurturing school environment, whacking the cold, hard surface of the wall, emphasizes his feelings of being dislocated and apart from other students. Walls symbolize separation, and the loner is being portrayed as someone who cannot breach metaphorical walls of silence that have been built around him by students who will not reach out the hand of friendship, and his own inability to attempt friendship because of the harsh environment he has observed and whose behaviors he now repeats in a cycle of isolation. So it's the idea that he's smacking his hands against the wall as probably hands have smacked into his own body. Okay, so this is where you unpack in your own personal way what your technique means in relation to your idea that you've expressed in your statement. Now, your link sentence is, without a doubt, Hodder is able to raise sympathy for a helpless child who has not been given the opportunity to belong and thus mimics the exclusionary behaviours that he has observed as an isolated newcomer at the school. So basically saying the same thing as your statement, but in different words, and it is wrapping up what you have what your reader should have learnt in your elaboration part of the paragraph. So as long as you've got statement and link in the same place, sometimes you can have your elaboration, your technique, and your example are all mixed up together in the one section. So if your example comes first and your technique comes after, that doesn't matter so much. As long as all these elements are in there. And then if you do another technique, it'll come here, and then you do another example, it'll come here. So you've got this eel supersized paragraph, okay? So learning to master this will give you a lot of advantages in the English classroom. So really take the time to get it right. Okay, good luck, gents.